Welcome to the Alfa Tonale. This is the new 5-seat compact SUV from Alfa Romeo. They haven't offered a compact SUV in the US before. This is it. It's actually incredibly good looking, and I actually am not a huge fan of green generally, but this car in green looks amazing. And so I'm very, very happy that this is here at all. You know what? It looks pretty good even as the Dodge Hornet, but this is the Alfa Romeo version. It is very similar to the Hornet, but let's talk through what it actually is. This is only available as a plug-in hybrid. That means it's a 1.3 liter, 180 horsepower turbo 4. Now that is paired with electric motors only in the rear. This does not come any other way. Those electric motors bring a bunch more power to the party. The total result is 285 horsepower, 347 pound-feet of torque, and a 6-speed automatic transmission, which actually is only worried about the front half of the car because the back half is direct drive. This is not cheap though. It starts in the mid-40s and loaded like we have it here, because this is the everything version, is $58,990. So essentially I'm in a $60,000 compact SUV. So we're talking about the likes of the Porsche Macan, the BMW X1 or X3, maybe the Mercedes GLB if you like that, even though I think it's pretty ugly. But I'm going to do a little bit different POV test drive today, because I'm going to go somewhere specifically for corners, because one of the interesting things about this is actually the dynamics of the vehicle. So we're going to go to the freeway for a minute here, and then we're going to have some discussion about the cornering dynamics of this car. I've got it in normal mode right now, which means it will use the hybrid as it can. I'm going to go up into dynamic there. On the Hornet, this is a drive mode button. Here it's Alpha, so it's the DNA system. Now I am not flooring it, so don't pretend that that's what's happening. It has solid power, not amazing power. But what's interesting is if you have everything going at once, the electric and the gasoline motor, this has a 0 to 60 just under 6 seconds, right about 6 seconds or so, which for this segment is pretty fast. In fact, for most SUVs of any kind and some sports cars, frankly, that's pretty quick. So there is a lot of, I don't know how I want to put it, let's say pep. Yes, pep, because it's an Italian. There we go. So this has quite a bit of power and takes off pretty well, which is good. If you have it in the dynamic mode like I do right now, you'll notice down here in the gauges, this is a temperature gauge for the car. If you put it back into normal mode, it actually becomes the amount of range you have for the all-electric mode. Now this will do as much as 30 miles, maybe a little over 30 in all-electric, which is most people's normal life. So this could be used as an all-electric car. Notice we have it drained now to the point where the hybrid system is just hanging on to enough power to help you with acceleration, but it can't go all-electric. We kind of did that on purpose because that is your worst-case scenario of driving this. Obviously, if you drive it as an all-electric vehicle, it's going to be using the rear axle all the time, and it's going to be quieter, and it's going to be, it's going to be an electric commuter car, and so that's fine. But once you drain that out of any of these, pick any plug-in hybrid, then it's interesting to see how the car operates trying to use that electric when you need it, but otherwise not having it available. So that's one of the reasons that this is drained all the way right now, so we can talk about that. I'm not spending a lot of time on the freeway in this vehicle because I want to show you cornering, because there's an interesting thing that happens in the dynamics of this vehicle. Keep in mind that the front half of this compact SUV is a front-wheel drive, 6-speed manual with a 4-cylinder attached to it. So that's the front half of the car. The back half of the car has the electric motors that are providing the extra push. So while this is technically all-wheel drive, meaning that all of the axles and all of the wheels move things, they are in no way connected to each other. And each power system only sends power to its half of the vehicle. So the gasoline motor never sends power to the rear. The electric motor never sends power to the front. That means that all the interaction that makes this an all-wheel drive vehicle happens with the computers. The digital information going back and forth through the ECU of the car is what's telling these two axles how to interact, which is very interesting and is something actually you can feel. Now I'm in EV mode right now, meaning it wants to use the electric if it can, because that's what the normal mode does. I can go into the all-electric mode, but what I'm going to do is go back into dynamic. Notice my suspension changes as well, gets more dynamic there, which you can feel. I'm going to go up a road that's not fast, but it is constant switchbacks. Now I do, of course, also have manual paddles here. This is the same steering wheel you find in other Alfa products, specifically the Giulia and the Stelvio, both of which are incredibly dynamic. Of course, those two are on the same chassis. This is not on the same chassis as the Giulia or the Stelvio. This is on a different chassis, of course, shared with the Dodge Hornet. But this does have that Alfa wheel, which means your start button's down here, and you have these big, I call them moose antler, actual paddles on the back because they are attached to the column, you can see, not the wheel. I prefer them attached to the wheel. There's much debate among auto journalists. Pick your side. I'm fine with it. But I just went into manual mode. I'm in second gear. This has quite a bit of power. It's nice to have that back half involved. But what's fascinating is that if you ask for power in a corner, as I just did, you can feel the system thinking, and it actually has all of the dynamic feel of a rear-wheel drive and a front-wheel drive vehicle. You get the pros and cons of both. That may seem strange, but what I mean is that here I am, look, I'm staying in a single gear so that the front half doesn't even have to think about shifting while we're doing this. But if I go into a corner, there's a surprising amount of body roll. It turns in pretty quick because it's front-wheel drive, and it kind of hangs on, but when you give it power on the back end, at first it scrubs like a front-wheel drive, then the back half of the vehicle engages and helps with rotation like rear-wheel drive. So you have all the dynamics of both available in one chassis here, and it's really strange, and sometimes they kind of hiccup in relation to each other. Six speed is good enough. The paddles are nice. They're actually in a great position, except if you're used to reaching, like I am, a tiny way for your turn signal, you're going to hit the paddle in the middle. You got to get used to reaching around the paddle for your turn signal. That may not be an issue for most people, but it is a reality here. I'm back into drive, so I can turn around and head back down. Back into manual mode, in second gear. Still in dynamic. Yeah, you can feel the front half engage, and then the back half wakes up and does something too. It is two halves of the car working independently. It actually does feel that way. Now, it all does kind of come together eventually, but as far as feeling coherent, sometimes it just doesn't. You can get, like I say, kind of the benefits of both worlds, and that's really cool. But there are definitely situations where you're aware of the fact that this is thinking and it's sending power both directions, especially when you're in a cornering situation where power coming out of corner is difficult for any chassis. That's the worst case scenario of any kind of drive situation, is power coming out of a corner. But it is fascinating. It is fascinating to feel the engagement and feel it actually think. This is a surprisingly dynamic vehicle. However, it isn't a standout in the class, and it isn't as good as the Giulia or even the Stelvio. Now, the Stelvio has a bit more body roll than I like, and this feels related to the Stelvio in that regard. This has, even in dynamic mode, a little more body roll than I would like it to have. However, we are talking about a CUV here, which is, kind of the unnecessarily lifted hatchback. Imagine what this would be like as an actual hatchback, besides great looking. Gosh, that'd be cool. Anyway, the Giulia is a wonderful sedan in any form as far as something to drive. And of course, it does not have the electric combined with the mechanical all-wheel drive system. You get an actual all-wheel drive system in that. Of course, it's best in rear-wheel drive. The dynamics are best in rear-wheel drive. This does not come in rear-wheel drive at all, unless you're driving all electric, but then you're limited in your range and your power. So trade-offs here. I don't know that I can really call this a rear-wheel drive vehicle. It is all-wheel drive all the time using two different power plants. The Stelvio and the Giulia both have more personality than this does. However, I really like that this exists. I hate that it's 60 grand. I mean, this feels in here, the interior quality wise, the back seats, everything, this feels like about a mid $40,000 vehicle. And of course, that is where it starts, but the way you're gonna want it is probably gonna be at least 50. So are you getting value for money here? The problem is that at $60,000, you can start really playing with a decent BMW X3 or a decent Porsche Macan. And at that point, those are better dynamically than this is, and they have a more traditional powertrain. Now, you cannot get those at this point in this plug-in hybrid form, and that's the only way that the Tonale comes, which is very usable. And for most people, you're gonna have a great looking, easy to use, nice, spacious, compact SUV. It's not really compact, it's got plenty of space in it. It's every bit as big as the Macan, I would argue even bigger in here. And you're gonna be able to go all electric on most of your errands because you can do 30 miles on all electric. So this is a compelling prospect in that reality. I just think when you started talking about it as a performance driving machine, it isn't a standout in that regard. So what do you need it for? Now, are you buying a compact SUV for its dynamics? In most cases, probably not, but here we are. I go back into normal mode. Everybody kind of shifts around. I get my, you have 1 mile. Oh, I have 1 whole mile worth of electricity. Ooh, look at me. You can decide here. You can decide to save your electricity for later. You can decide to go into the all EV mode, which I'm in right now, and I'll sit here and use up my 1 mile getting on the freeway. I like the HVAC system. It's very easy and readable. The touchscreen works great. It's actually using Uconnect because, of course, this is Stellantis, so it's connected to the Dodge products now. So the Uconnect is the base system behind this. This looks good. It's easy to use. This touchscreen actually, everything feels a little small on the touchscreen, but it's all very precise, which is nice. You have this weird rolling volume knob, which is a bit oddball, but luckily on the steering wheel you have your own volume there as well. Notice that my engine is off right now as I'm in EV mode, and I have 1 whole mile I can use. Yay me. All right, I'm in my all EV mode. The engine started again because I used more power. I go back to normal. Hear a little bit of an electric whine. I don't know if you guys can hear, but there's a little bit of an electric whine from the back half of the vehicle. Again, I've never punched it in this entire discussion. It has decent power here. I'll do it. Yeah, it's decent. And frankly, the fact that it gets a 0 to 60 around 6 is kind of profound for something in this class. So that is competing with the more performance-oriented ones in this segment, which again is the BMW and the Mercedes and the Porsche. This is a fantastic alt to those obvious German choices. Now, I don't like the seats as much as some of those more performance-oriented ones. The base of them doesn't have enough structure to it. But by and large, this is a comfortable and roomy place to be. It's got a full panoramic sunroof, which is nice. Frankly, the paddles kind of make you want to engage. I think you have to decide 2 things here. Are you going to spend between $50,000 and $60,000 on your compact SUV? And if so, then at that point the Tonale is worth the consideration because it is an alt. It is a standout, be different choice, which I am always for the alt choice. It's just, I hate seeing a sea of sameness in vehicles. This stands out wonderfully. Get it in a color like this green or something else. The styling is worth it, and it's a nice place to be. It doesn't feel like a $60,000 vehicle, and the performance is not at the upper level of these. Now, the upper level of the BMW or the Porsche are going to cost you closer to $70,000 to get all of the tech in those, all of the performance in those. So this might be a middle ground that works for you, but you're going to have to debate, do you want to have the alternative, and do you like this styling, or do you want to shop the Dodge Hornet, which looks an awful lot like this, but more muscle car? This has a more svelte, European, sexy look. The Dodge Hornet looks a little more aggressive. So what's your style? Let's be honest. Otherwise, they are the same thing. This is badge engineering going on here. Thanks for joining me on another POV. We will be back with more, and also lots of test drives.